So Deepak, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this with me and with us for the Parliament. Do I recall, were you, I think you were a speaker at the Parliament in Barcelona in 2000.
I was, yes.
Yeah, so
And I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for having me here. I'm sorry I can't be there physically, but Ryan will be there representing Ishar, which is part of the Chopra Foundation. And we have two reporters also coming to report on the conference. So it's going to be, we are going to be represented there.
you'll be there in more than spirit then. That's
Yes.
good. Your daughter is also coming. I'm delighted.
That's right. My daughter
She's going to
Mallika
be,
will also be there.
Mallika is
Yes.
going to be one of the speakers at the inaugural Women's Assembly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're
Well,
delighted.
so you'll have our family there too.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to meeting her in person. She is an impressive young woman, and
She
to
is
have
indeed.
the presence of young women leaders is
Yes, she is indeed.
one of the questions that we're going to be exploring at the Women's Assembly, which is historic. It's the first time it's been done, and we're looking into all kinds of wonderful questions. One of which is how men can support women's leadership in religion and in spiritual paths. And for me, the role of a father with a daughter, I think, is one of the most important examples. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, it's a personal subject, but if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your role in nurturing a young woman leader.
Actually, my daughter and her leadership skills were nurtured more by my wife than by me. So, and that's true of me as well. I think had we not had the support of my wife, none of us would be where we are today. So I want to acknowledge that leadership comes in many forms. You know, when my wife was pregnant with Mallika, I was an intern in Boston, earning $200 every 2 weeks. And we didn't have insurance to get the delivery. So we had to send her to India to have the baby, which caused a lot of consternation amongst our family because that meant that Mallika would never be able to stand for president if she was born in another country, but we had no choice. So she's a great leader, but I'm afraid she won't be running for president.
No pressure. That's good. It took the pressure
She'll
off.
do a better job without running into politics.
Exactly. But there is this interesting convergence of politics when you bring women and religion and equal rights into the same framework for a conversation. But I think if we approach it from the point of view of the divine feminine, it moves beyond politics. So this is a subject that I think you would be able to share with us. And if you would.
Yeah, this is a subject that's actually very relevant to the Parliament of Religions because of the word divine there. So we should address it. And you know, you were also asking earlier, how can men support women in leadership roles? I think we don't have to worry about that. If men don't do it, they'll become irrelevant. So we don't need to even concern ourselves about that. I was once inspired by something that the great scientist Jonas Salk from the Salk Institute of Biology said. Everyone knows who he was. He was the man who created the polio vaccine. And he was a very eminent scientist, but towards the end of his life, he was getting interested in evolutionary biology. And he coined the term survival of the fittest should be replaced by survival of the wisest. And he coined the term metabiological evolution. And just to summarize my understanding of what he was saying, he was basically going back into the history of the evolution of the human species. And, you know, we've come through several ages, started as tribal people, where basically it was all about survival, and the survival depended on the hunt, basically. So men were the tribal chiefs, and they depended on going out and killing, basically, to bring back food for the family and the tribe. But then, as each age evolved, the previous age did not get lost. So we had the age of horticulture, agriculture, we had the age of industry, we now have the information age, and I'm hoping that the information age will lead to the age of knowledge and ultimately to the age of wisdom. So wisdom is that kind of knowledge that nurtures life. And therefore, the next age, if we survive, all the problems we have right now, climate change and eco-destruction and extinction of species and poison in our food, all of that, and mechanized death, if we survive, and the only way we will survive is if we invite the divine feminine, because the feminine is that energy or that archetypal symbolic expression of the divine that embodies everything that we long for: beauty, intuition, nurturing, creativity, tenderness, affection. At the same time, leadership that takes us to a level which is beyond conquest and warfare and driven by ego. So as I think of the divine feminine, of course, you can go to any cultural mythology or any religion. So in every religion, you have angels, gods, goddesses, you have archetypes, you have devas, you have devis. But what are these gods and goddesses? They are symbolic expressions of our highest longings and aspirations that are embedded in our collective consciousness. And they're found in East, West, in Egypt, in the Indian mythologies and religions. They are found in Egypt, they are found in Greece. So let's take any one of those examples, and for the sake of convenience, because you're having this conference in the United States, let's take the Greek archetypes that are basically, it's Greek civilization that gave birth to Western civilization, but they're not any different from any other of the other divine feminine archetypes, which are symbolic expressions of higher states of consciousness, energy, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So you have Demeter, she's mother. The mother that I see in Mother Teresa, who nourishes and heals. You have Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and she's the custodian of the arts and sciences, but also of culture and music and poetry and everything that brings meaning and joy to our life. You have Aphrodite, who represents beauty and sexuality and the energy, the creative energy that comes with sexual energy and also with the beauty that we find everywhere, not only in humans but in nature. You have Artemis, and she's our connection to nature, the one who takes care of plants, animals, has a deep connection to what we today call the environment, which actually is our extended body. Yes. You have Hera, the goddess of power, but a different kind of power, a different kind of leadership that actually is not strident, not angry, but the leadership that listens with the heart and the mind, the soul, and the leadership that serves the deepest longings and aspirations of our collective soul, if you will. She's the symbolic expression of our collective soul. You have Persephone, and she's the alchemist, and she's the healer. She understands the subconscious mind, and she navigates the domain of awareness, which actually gives rise to our conscious mind. We're just not aware of it. And so in her we have this navigation of the mind that never sleeps. You have Hestia, the homemaker, and she takes care of not only family, but she takes care of the home and in its all its beauty and all its nurturing and the shelter that we find when we think of the word home. So now let's look at these. These are seven different amazing states of consciousness. Mother, leader, scientist and artist and custodian of culture, environmentalist, connection with nature. You have healer and alchemist and Persephone, and you have beauty, sexuality, and you have taking care of the home. Imagine a cabinet led by a leader who, who was a Hera, but she had these different energies surrounding her. We would have a different world, completely a different world. And at this moment, we need it desperately. We need to invite the divine feminine in our cultural awareness, in our cultural consciousness, in our civilization right now. And unless we do that, we risk our extinction. And when we look at the divine feminine, we find that she's present in all religions. So it's a perfect theme, actually, for me to be talking about in this conversation with you at the Parliament of Religions. You know, if we look at the common themes in all religions, forget the differences that come from people who are fundamentalists, but if you look at common themes, number one is transcendence. We understand that there is a domain of awareness which is beyond our mind, which we call the spirit, or which we call that reality that's non-local, that's not in space and time. So every religion actually owes its birth to an experience that the founder of religion had as transcendence, went beyond this ordinary world of space-time and causality. The second theme that we find in all religions is the emergence of certain values that we call, you know, for lack of a better word, we call morality, which I'm not so sure I like that word. These are evolutionary Platonic values, as in Plato's Republic. What are Platonic values? Truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, evolution, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. This is the evolutionary impulse of the divine that expresses itself as all form and phenomena. And the third thing that we find in every religion is the loss of the fear of death, because the transcendent is not in time. And there's a part of reality, and we are part of that reality, which is not in time. Our being, our awareness, our essence, if you will. So let's embrace these values, which are universal, and they're not restricted to any religion. Also, let's embrace the divine feminine, which has been present in every story of spiritual experience in every part of the world.
Wonderful. I think part of the crisis that we're dealing with now, particularly with regard to the environment, is this failure to embrace the divine feminine, the suppression of it and the denial of it, so that we've ended up with a culture radically out of balance, with individual personalities and souls that are out of balance, with religions that are out of balance because they have excluded or denied or suppressed the feminine instead of honoring and embracing it. We're out of balance. It's a culture and a period out of balance. Part of the irony, I think, right now in the environmental crisis is that the way in which at least Western cultures have treated the planet, the natural world, is the way in which they've treated women in a sort of objectified manner, to be exploited and to be dominated, and perceived as if it were lacking in a sacred or holy aspect, right? That it's devoid of divinity, and therefore it can be objectified, it can be exploited, when in fact it's the opposite. And that to me is one of the gifts that women bring to spiritual experience, to spiritual discourse, to the culture, that they restore that experience of the divine is embodied, that it's within all of us, just as the divine feminine is within men. It's in the world. It's of the world, and it transforms the way we experience the world. That suddenly, that to me is enlightenment. That we are in the presence of the sacred. We give birth to it in the way in which we live our lives. It's a different metaphor system, but it reflects a different experience of reality. And we need it. We need it immediately in order to have a new relationship with the earth.
I agree. You know, one of the problems is our language itself. We refer to this nature as the environment, and that itself is an alienating word. It's not an environment, it's our extended body. The air is our breath, the rivers and waters of our planet are our circulation, the earth recycles as our body, and everything that we call the environment is ourselves. We have a personal body, we have an extended universal body, and they're both equally ours. Similarly, as you said, we've objectified the feminine, and that's a tribal mindset. The feminine resides in all of us, and probably is a more accurate term for the birth of the universe. The universe was born out of something, and you know, it wasn't created by an external entity, a dead white male in the sky. The universe was born, and it's a living organism. It has life history, a birth, and adolescence, and hopefully we are going beyond the adolescence right now as we invite the divine feminine into our lives, whether we are men or women.
I think it's a fascinating idea that the divine is evolving, that it doesn't exist.
Well, the expressions of the divine are certainly evolving, yes.
Yeah. Let me ask you just one or two more questions while I have you. I could probably talk to you for hours, but we'll have to do that another time. We'll follow up post-Parliament. In your experience, observing your wife, observing your daughter, you've worked, for example, I know with Debbie Ford and many other women. What has been your experience of working with women in the context of spirituality? How do you
My experience with working with women has been that they're not as ego-driven as men, and they are better listeners, and they are able to create better teams in general. Of course, one can't, say this of every woman. There are women leaders who are very strident and angry and willful, and because they're competing with men, especially in politics. But in general, I find it easier to work with women, and also I find that there is an emphasis on intuition, on creativity, on listening, on vision, which is not about personal gratification. It's less, there's always that. We're all have an ego identity as well. But that's been my experience. In fact, at the Chopra Center, our leadership team is all women, led by one woman, but 12 people in the leadership team. I think there are one or two men. Most of them are women.
It's just making life easier for you, I trust.
Yeah, well, I just once in a while listen to what the progress is. I don't interfere.
Yeah. That's a wise man. Can I ask you, just tell us a little bit about the work of the Chopra Foundation and also about Ishar.
Okay, so the Chopra Foundation is involved right now in cutting-edge research on the biology or the biological effects of practices, spiritual practices, meditation. We have a study going on the effect of meditation on gene expression and also on the enzyme telomerase, which is an anti-aging enzyme that controls the biological clock at the genetic level. We have some extraordinary research how meditation changes our biology at the cellular level, actually at the genetic level. We also are doing research on the effects of emotions on our biology, how love, compassion, joy, empathy, equanimity, and gratitude change our cell biology at a fundamental level. In addition, we're doing clinical trials on a program at our center called Self-Directed Biological Transformation, where through self-reflection, self-regulation, meditation, breath and body awareness, and good habits of sleep, stress management, conscious communication, and nutrition, exercise, yoga, and breathing techniques, we can actually see a radical transformation of the human biology, reversal of many diseases, and all this is now getting ready for publication. We already have some peer-reviewed publications that Ishar is documenting. So Ishar is a part of the Chopra Foundation, which is a non-profit, and Ishar is hopefully today's Library of Alexandria. Ryan Castle runs Ishar, he's the CEO of it, and we already have well over 30,000 or more peer-reviewed articles on what we call integrative sciences. So Ishar stands for Integrative Studies, Historical Archive and Repository. And this is basically going to be your source, which will give you any information that you want on integrative sciences, whether they refer to biology or sociology or what we call the environment, all the issues that you and I have been talking about. We will have peer-reviewed scientific citations on the work that has been done historically, the work that is being done today, and the work that will be done in the near future. So this is a major contribution, I think, because if I go to Wikipedia or elsewhere, I'm not going to be able to find this information.
We should point out that the first librarian, the famous librarian of Alexandria, was a woman.
Yes, yes. Well, so this is, we will have a huge list on studies on feminism and hopefully the research that we are doing of how inviting that divine feminine and incarnating it, or let's say embodying it in our biology, will change the way we perceive the world and see the world.
As somebody who has done that actively for 35 years, and who everybody thinks is 10, 15 years younger than I am, I can tell you that it works, that good practices generate remarkable personal and contextual results. Are you looking at all into shamanic work, journeying? Yeah.
We are looking at every tradition, the shamanic work, and indigenous cultures throughout the world.
This has been my personal fascination for 35 years working with Michael Harner and gradually retrieving the indigenous traditions of Europe.
Well,
have so many
we have
parallels.
an opportunity to engage you now that our Ishar representatives will be there at the conference.
Yes, wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you was why you signed the Declaration for the Dignity and Human Rights of Women.
Well, if we don't do that, we're ignoring 50% of the human population. And besides, 51% actually, I believe. So we are ignoring the majority of humans on our planet. And that's the first step. I think we have to go way beyond that. We have to actually see that without this majority of humanity, our civilization is in peril.
It is. Can you tell me, what do you think is the disconnect between the core values, the core I hate to say beliefs because I think at some level they really are more, if indeed one is using a system of practices, they become experiences. But let's say beliefs, the powerful beliefs that are at the core of most religious traditions, and the lack of attention to human rights of women, but of other people. And it seems
I
to me that
think
social justice grows naturally out of the deepest religious impulses, and yet there seems to be a cultural disconnect.
the disconnect is basically part of our evolution. We haven't grown up, basically. As I mentioned, we still have tribal mindsets and still live in the fight-flight mode, controlled by our reptilian brain, which is about 300 million years in evolution. And we are ignoring the limbic brain, which is our emotional brain. And we have a cortical brain that we use to create mechanized death and weapons of mass destruction. There is no integration between our limbic brain, our cortical brain, and our reptilian brain, which is basically irrelevant at the moment. You know, it's what is causing our is risk for extinction, because we have a tribal mindset, primitive mind, and then capacities for modern destruction or mass extinction. Unless we grow up, and hopefully we are, and embracing the divine feminine and bringing dignity to the majority of the human population is now absolutely crucial. It was part of our adolescence and our growth, but patriarchy should be obsolete now.
I think I hate to, but I would say that's a very good note to end on.
Well, thank you, Phyllis, and I wish you all the best at the conference. And now I'm going to be there as well,
Wonderful, you
at
are.
least in
And
this format.
we'll look forward to more work together in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for lending us Mallika.
Yes, thank you. She'll be representing our family, and also she has some great ideas on how intention can organize anything we want.
Wonderful. Well, I know that to be true after 9 months of planning the Women's Assembly.
Yeah, but
Thank you
remember,
very
she's unable to run for president,
much.
even though we
Just
want
as
her.
well. Blessings. Thank you.
Blessings. Bye-bye.